This woman found out her sister wanted to date the same guy who gave her an STD, and her reaction? Let's just say that sibling bond shattered real fast. But that's only scratching the surface, because today's stories are full of betrayal, breakups, and some of the wildest family drama you'll ever hear. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to AITA Chronicles, where we break down the craziest Reddit AITA stories every single day. If you love moral chaos, messy relationships, and that I can't believe they did that kind of drama, you're in the right place. We're on the road to 10K subscribers, and every like, sub, and comment helps us build this amazing community. So if you're into AITA deep dives, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this lineup, it's pure madness. Am I the asshole for telling my wife we either share our Lotto winnings or we separate? Winning the lottery is supposed to be a dream come true, right? A golden ticket to a better life. But for the writer, it quickly became a nightmare. The moment that money hit their account, everything changed. And not in a new car, fancy vacations kind of way. No, this was the kind of change that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the person you married. So let's break it down. The writer and their wife hit the jackpot. Well, not the jackpot, but enough to wipe out their mortgage and still have some left over. That alone is life-changing. They always daydreamed about what they'd do if they won, cutting back on work hours, spending more time with the kids, actually living instead of just working to survive. Sounds like a solid plan, right? But the moment that mortgage was paid off, something shifted. The wife had a very different vision. She was ready to quit her job entirely, and not in a let's discuss this together way, but in a my money, my rules way. And that's where things get messy. See, the writer assumed they were in this together. I mean, it wasn't just her buying tickets before. They both did. Then when they moved in together, they agreed to just buy one ticket instead of two. So if that ticket happened to be the winner, shouldn't that mean it belongs to both of them? Right? That's common sense, right? Apparently not. The wife doubled down, claiming she won, so she gets to decide. And when the writer suggested she at least consider working part-time or taking unpaid leave here and there instead of quitting entirely, she lost it. She called him a gold digger. Yes, her own husband, a man who has been by her side for who knows how long, is suddenly a gold digger. I mean, come on. The math isn't even mathing here. The mortgage is gone, but life still costs money. Bills, groceries, kids, those things don't disappear just because your job does. And on the writer's salary alone, things would be tight. But the wife, she was already mentally checked out. She wasn't just thinking about quitting, she announced she was putting in her notice. No discussion, no compromise, just done. And that's when the writer snapped. If you're not going to share the winnings, then I'll divorce you and get half anyway. And boom, that was the final explosion. The wife went nuclear, another screaming match, more accusations of him being a gold digger. And now, the writer is sitting there, exhausted, lost, and questioning everything. They feel like their wife has been replaced by a completely different person. And honestly, I can't blame them. So now, here's the big question. Is the writer the asshole for demanding they share the winnings? Because let's be real, if you're in a marriage, isn't the whole point that you share everything? Or does the fact that the ticket was technically in her name make this a different story? Let me know what you think in the comments, because this is a wild one. Am I the asshole for telling my sister she lost me the second she even considered dating my ex, who gave me an STD and didn't tell me? All right, let's lay it all out. Because this isn't some petty sibling drama. This isn't about a little jealousy over an ex. This is about trust, betrayal, and absolute disregard for someone's well-being. The backstory. The writer was with Jason, her ex, when they were young, 20 or 21. And for a while, things must have seemed okay. But then everything unraveled in the absolute worst way possible. Jason cheated. Bad enough. But then, the kicker, he contracted an STD from cheating and didn't say a word. Let's pause here. This isn't just, oops, he made a mistake. This isn't just a bad breakup. This is deliberate harm. He knew he had an STD. He was told by doctors that he needed to inform any sexual partners. He had every opportunity to come clean, and he chose not to. Do you know how horrifying that is? The complete and utter lack of respect for someone's health, body, and future? The writer was left not only dealing with a broken heart, but facing real-life medical consequences, ones that could have affected her ability to have children. Understandably, when the truth came out, the writer's family rallied around her. They supported her. They saw Jason for what he was, a reckless, selfish liar. Her sister, the same one who's the focus of this story, she was one of the people comforting the writer, standing by her side, seeing firsthand the devastation Jason caused. And let's be clear, this wasn't just some high school heartbreak. This was trauma. But life moved on. The writer healed. Thankfully, her fertility wasn't permanently affected. She met her now husband, had a baby, and built a happy life. Jason was nothing but a terrible memory until 3 months ago. The writer's sister, the same one who once supported her through this nightmare, she comes forward with a question. Would you be okay if I started dating Jason? I'm sorry, what? Let's break this down. The sister wasn't just casually asking about some random ex-boyfriend. This isn't, hey, do you mind if I date that guy you went on 3 dates with in college? This is Jason, the man who cheated, lied, risked the writer's health, and caused her unimaginable pain. How does someone even consider this? What goes through a person's mind where they think, yeah, I know he betrayed my sister in one of the worst ways possible, but he seems nice now? The writer's reaction? Silence. She didn't yell. She didn't curse her sister out. She just walked away. Because really, what do you even say to that? And sure enough, it turns out the sister had already been seeing Jason. She just wanted to check if the writer would give her blessing to make it official. The fallout. The writer completely cuts her sister out. And honestly, who can blame her? No more talking, no visits, not even allowed to meet the writer's child. And the rest of the family? They stand with the writer. They don't cut the sister out entirely, but they don't support her choice either. And you know what? That's a perfectly reasonable stance. They're not shunning her, but they're also not acting like what she did was okay. And now the sister is suddenly regretting everything. She's trying to reach out, begging the writer to talk to her, crying about how much she doesn't want to lose her sister. But the writer, she's done. Then, in what can only be described as a desperate last-ditch effort, the sister ambushes the writer at her house. She says she'll break up with Jason if that's what it takes. She just wants her sister back. And that's when the writer delivers the final blow. You lost me the second you even considered dating him. Not the second she acted on it. Not when she made it official. The moment she even thought about it, the relationship was over. The aftermath. Now the sister is devastated, crying, trying to get the rest of the family to take her side, but they won't. Even their youngest sister, while acknowledging that the older sister is genuinely hurt, agrees that this is her own fault. And now the writer is left wondering, was that too harsh? Is the writer the asshole? No, not even a little. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't some heat of the moment mistake. The sister actively pursued a man who caused unforgivable harm to her own flesh and blood. Think about it. What does it say about the sister that she even entertained the idea of dating Jason? What does it say about her respect for the writer's pain? What does it say about her judgment? And then when she finally realizes that actions have consequences, when she sees that her selfishness actually cost her something, now she's ready to break up with Jason? Too little, too late. You don't get to test how much your family will tolerate your betrayal and then cry when they decide they're done with you. The sister knew exactly what she was doing. She just thought she could get away with it, and now that she can't, she's playing the victim. The writer did nothing wrong. She set a boundary, she stuck to it, and she refused to let disrespect be rewarded. So no, the writer isn't the asshole. The sister? That's a different story. But what do you all think? Is the writer right to cut her sister off completely, or should she give her a second chance? Let me know in the comments. Am I an asshole for refusing to stop wearing my lucky dress because my best friend thinks it's embarrassing? You ever have that one outfit that just feels right? That piece of clothing that for some reason just makes everything better? Maybe it's an old hoodie, a pair of jeans that fit just right, or in the writer's case, a flowy sundress with little stars on it. Now here's the thing. The writer doesn't literally believe the dress has magical powers. They're not out here making sacrifices to the fabric gods or anything, but every time they wear it, good things seem to happen. Unexpected opportunities, free stuff, random compliments. Whether it's luck, confidence, or pure coincidence, it makes them feel good. So they wear it. A lot. Seems harmless, right? Enter Ava. Ava, the best friend, has made it her personal mission to rid the world of this dress. She thinks it's childish, overworn, and makes the writer look like they're stuck in high school. And it's not just a passing comment here and there. This girl despises the dress. Every time the writer wears it, Ava has to say something. A dramatic sigh, an eye roll, "you're wearing that again?" as if the dress personally insulted her family. Look, we all have opinions on fashion. Maybe Ava doesn't love the dress. That's fine. But pushing this hard over what someone else wears, that's where things start to get weird. And then we get to the brunch incident. So the writer and Ava go out for a casual meal just trying to enjoy their day. The writer shows up in the infamous dress, and apparently that's the last straw. Right in the middle of brunch, Ava snaps. "I can't take this anymore. Can you please just retire that thing?" Retire it? Like it's an old football player who's past its prime? Like it's a sitcom that's gone on too long? What is happening? The writer laughs it off because, honestly, what else do you do when your best friend declares war on your wardrobe? But Ava isn't joking. She keeps pushing. The dress makes the writer look stuck in the past. It's embarrassing to be seen with them in it. And when the writer finally stands up for themselves, pointing out that what they wear has zero impact on Ava's life, they're suddenly the childish one? Really? Who's actually being immature here? The person wearing a dress they like, minding their business, or the person throwing a full-on intervention over a piece of fabric? And here's where it gets even pettier. Now, because the writer refused to bow down and burn the dress in a ceremonial fire, Ava is barely speaking to them. A mutual friend even suggests they should just stop wearing it to keep the peace. But let's be real. If a dress is enough to ruin a friendship, was there ever really peace to begin with? Now let's answer the real question. Is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. Since when does friendship come with a dress code? Since when do we have to run our wardrobe choices past our friends for approval? The writer isn't wearing something offensive, inappropriate, or anything that actually affects Ava's life. It's a dress, a harmless, flowy, star-patterned dress. If Ava is so deeply embarrassed by her friend's clothing that she's willing to throw away the friendship over it, then maybe, just maybe, she's not that great of a friend to begin with. So no, the writer isn't the asshole. But Ava? That's a different story. What do you think? Should the writer cave and get rid of the dress just to keep the peace? Or is Ava the one making a big deal out of nothing? Let me know in the comments. Am I the asshole for telling my wife I want a divorce after she said I have to keep showing up no matter what? Alright, buckle up because this one is heavy. It's not just about step-parenting struggles. This is about boundaries, respect, and being forced into an impossible situation. The setup. The writer married Lisa 4 years ago, knowing full well she had 2 kids from her previous marriage. That's not an issue. Plenty of people take on the role of a step-parent and build wonderful blended families. But this is not that. From the start, things were complicated. Lisa and her ex had a strained relationship, and while they could be civil for the kids, there wasn't much co-parenting happening. Then the ex-husband started being outright hostile to the writer, telling him to know his place and not to talk to his kids. And it only got worse from there. The kids, they started mirroring their dad's behavior. Now, let's be clear. Kids aren't just born disrespectful. They learn it from somewhere. And in this case, their dad was the one feeding them this narrative. Lisa took it to court, but the judge ruled it wasn't parental alienation, so nothing changed. The shifting dynamic. At first, the writer followed the kids' lead on what to call them. He asked if they'd like him to drop step and just say my kids. They said no. He respected that. But then suddenly, Lisa starts insisting that he should be calling them his kids, even though they were actively rejecting him, even though they were straight up saying, "You're not our stepdad." How does that make sense? The kids don't want him claiming them as stepkids. Lisa doesn't want him calling them stepkids either. But somehow, he's still expected to be their full-fledged dad? That's some next-level contradiction. Tat, the disrespect escalates. And here's where things really start spiraling. Lisa keeps pushing for the writer to be more involved, even though the kids are getting more and more disrespectful. And their dad? His hostility increases, not just toward the writer, but even toward the 3-year-old child the writer and Lisa share together. That's when things go from bad to horrifying. The kids stop even pretending to be kind to their half-sibling. They start repeating their dad's hateful words toward their half-sibling. They go from indifference to pure resentment. And let's be clear, Lisa knew all of this was happening. She even took it back to court, and nothing changed. The writer suggests therapy for the kids, for the family, for anyone who might help fix this. Lisa says no to individual therapy, even when it's recommended. And then, the final straw, the moment that changed everything. The writer picks up the older stepchild from practice, a completely normal, everyday situation, and in the car, he makes casual conversation, and the kid snaps. Starts with, "You're not my dad." Escalates to, "I'll accuse you of abuse so you'll be punished and never see us again." Ends with, "That would make us happy because we hate you, just like our dad does." Excuse me? That's not just some bratty attitude. That's a threat, a serious, life-destroying threat. The writer is understandably shaken. He goes to Lisa, expecting any kind of support. And what does she say? "You need to remain strong and keep showing up because they all need you." I'm sorry, what? The cold, hard truth. Lisa isn't just asking the writer to stick it out and hope things get better. She's completely ignoring reality. Her children have made it clear they don't want him around. One literally threatened to falsely accuse him of abuse. And her response? Just keep being there. You signed up for this. No. Just no. This is not a bad step-parenting phase. This is not a rough patch. This is a dangerous situation. If that kid follows through with their threat, his life is over. And Lisa, she doesn't even care. She expects him to keep walking into a burning building, knowing full well that at any moment, he could be trapped inside. The breaking point. That's when the writer does what any rational, self-respecting person would do. He leaves. Before walking out the door, he makes it clear, "I want a divorce. I am not sticking around for this." Lisa? She loses it. She says he's giving up, that they'd win in the end if he just stayed, that he just needs to work harder. Work harder? How much harder is he supposed to work? He's already tried to form a bond with the kids, respected their boundaries, put up with their hostility, pushed for therapy, continued showing up despite being treated like trash. And now he's supposed to risk his entire future on the hope that maybe someday things might change? Absolutely not. And then comes the guilt tripping. Even after he moves out, Lisa and her family will not let it go. Lisa keeps insisting he reconsider. Her father confronts him and tells him to man up. All while, in the background, Lisa and the kids are actively fighting about her calling him their dad. So let's get this straight. They're mad that he's not being a dad, but they're also mad at the idea of calling him their dad. But somehow, he's still expected to keep fighting for a relationship with them? Make it make sense. Is the writer the asshole? Absolutely. Positively, 100% no. The writer tried to be a good step-parent. The kids rejected him. The biological dad poisoned them against him. Lisa ignored every red flag and demanded more from him. The kids made a life-destroying threat. Lisa expected him to stay anyway. At some point, you have to recognize when a situation is unfixable. The writer didn't abandon a family. The family abandoned him. They threw him to the wolves and then got mad when he refused to be eaten alive. Lisa can cry about it all she wants, but she made this bed. Now she gets to lie in it. Final verdict? not the asshole. Lisa, she's the asshole. Her ex, definitely the asshole. And those kids, they've been taught to be assholes, and that's on their parents. What do you think? Should the writer have stuck it out, or was leaving the only sane option? Let me know in the comments. Am I the asshole for reversing the student loan payment I made for my ex-girlfriend? Oh, this is rich. A classic case of entitlement, manipulation, and someone realizing just a little too late that they messed with the wrong person. All right, let's break this down. The setup. The writer, being a generous and kind-hearted guy, did something that most people wouldn't even consider. He paid off his girlfriend's entire $35,000 student loan. Now, let's pause here. That is not a small amount of money. That is life-changing money. Most people struggle with student loan debt for decades, and here's the writer just wiping it clean like it's nothing. That's huge. But instead of being grateful, instead of seeing this as an incredible gift, his girlfriend turns around and basically says, "Cool, thanks. Now pay off my sister's $42K too." Excuse me? What? The audacity. Imagine that level of entitlement. The writer already did something most partners would never do. He took on a massive financial burden that wasn't even his, and instead of appreciating it, his ex immediately demanded more. Not even a please, not even a thank you, just straight to "now pay off my sister's debt too." At this point, you have to wonder, was this love or was this a financial scam? And when the writer said no, she threw a fit and the relationship ended. Honestly, good riddance. That alone should have been the end of it. But no, we're just getting started. The reversal heard round the world. After breaking up, the writer takes Reddit's advice, good job internet, and calls the loan servicer to reverse the payment. And guess what? It works. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it, but oh no, that's when the real chaos begins. His ex goes nuclear. 50 plus texts. 50 plus. She's calling him every name in the book. Her family gets involved, threatening legal action, which, yeah, good luck with that. And then the pièce de résistance. Her sister shows up at his apartment, screaming about how he ruined their plans. Wait. What plans? Now, let's talk about that for a second. Ruined their plans? That right there tells us everything we need to know. This wasn't just a girlfriend for some financial help. This was a plot. They fully expected the writer to cave in and fork over another $42K like it was nothing. They had plans for his money. They weren't just ho-himping, they were count on it, which means this wasn't just a relationship. This was a financial strategy. So now, the writer's friends are split. Half say it was justified. She was using him, she didn't deserve the money, and reversing the payment was the right move. Half say he should have just walked away and left it alone. Honestly, the writer was 100% in the right. Why? Because that money wasn't a gift in the traditional sense. It was a manipulation trap. Let's be real. If the writer had proposed and they got married, he would have never seen that money again. But once she demanded more, it became clear. This wasn't love, this was financial extortion. And when someone manipulates you, you are not obligated to let them win. And is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. His ex used him, her family tried to milk him for even more money. He saw through it and took his money back. Frankly, good for him. She played a stupid game and won a stupid prize. Final verdict? Not the asshole. The ex? Massive asshole. The sister, even bigger asshole. The whole family, financial predators in disguise. Let this be a lesson to everyone. Love is priceless, but being someone's ATM, that'll cost you. What do you think? Was the writer justified, or do you think he should have just walked away? Let me know in the comments. Am I the asshole for reminding my mom she said we couldn't have a relationship with her unless we accepted her husband? Let me tell you, this one's personal. This one cuts deep. This isn't just about some awkward step-parent tension or petty family drama. No, this is about loyalty, grief, control, and a mother's ultimatum that backfired so hard it's practically echoing through years of silence. Let's dive in. Our writer, 27 years old, lost his father at just 10. His sister was 12. That's an age where you remember Everything. You remember the voice, the smell, the way your dad tucked you in at night or showed up for school plays. It's not a blur. It's not distant. That loss etched itself into their childhood. And just 5 years later, their mom remarried. Enter Frank, or should I say, Commander Frank. From the very beginning, Frank came with rules. Tyrannical, heartless rules. He didn't want to hear the name of the writer's father. Ever. Not even whispered. Not at home. Not in public. Not at a freaking graduation dinner where the writer's sister had the audacity to mention her late father in a speech. Frank screamed at her own graduation. Let that sink in. The man married to their mother wanted the memory of their father erased from all spaces. Erased. Imagine grieving someone you love and being told by the new husband that their name is banned, that their memory is inconvenient, that your pain should be quiet, hidden. Now imagine the person enabling that behavior is your own mom. It gets worse. Frank wasn't just an emotional dictator. He was territorial. He inserted himself into everything, especially when it involved their dad's side of the family. He made them ask permission to see their own grandparents, like uncles, cousins. And if he wasn't invited, he'd force his way in. If he wasn't welcome somewhere, they weren't allowed to go. Control, manipulation, power trips. That's what this was. Not love, not family. And through all of this, their mom stood by Frank. She let it happen, even backed him up. She said it clearly. You want a relationship with me? Then you have to have one with Frank. That was the condition. A cruel ultimatum. So the writer and his sister made the only choice they could. They walked away. No more birthdays, no more holidays, no more invitations. And when she tried to show up without leaving Frank behind, they closed the door. Then came the engagement. Our writer gets engaged, but his mom finds out secondhand. Why? Because she's not in his life anymore. She removed herself the moment she made Frank the barrier to her children. She's angry, hurt, shocked. She wants to throw an engagement party. She wants to meet the fiancé. But the writer shuts it down. Cold. And here's the thing. He doesn't even sugarcoat it. He tells her plainly, you're not invited. Why? Because Frank isn't welcome. And if Frank isn't welcome, she won't come. She made the rule. The writer's just enforcing it now. He even reminds her of that fact. You said we couldn't have a relationship with you without him. So here we are. And she crumbles. Not because she's sorry. Not because she finally sees what she did wrong. But because now she feels the pain. Now she realizes what she lost. She tells him he's being unfair. That they should have talked more. But where was that conversation when they were kids crying over their dad and being told to shut up? Where was that grace when Frank yelled at his sister in front of an entire room? Where was the compromise when they begged their mom to just let them love their dad out loud? Let's get real for a second. This isn't about being the bigger person. This isn't about grudges. This is about setting boundaries and refusing to let emotional abuse slide just because it's coming from family. The writer didn't ask for this situation. He didn't demand his mom divorce Frank. All he wanted was the ability to remember his dad without being punished for it. To love his family without having to beg for permission. And now, his mom doesn't get to show up in a wedding like nothing ever happened. She doesn't get the photo ops. She doesn't get to meet the fiancé and smile for the camera, pretending like she wasn't complicit in years of emotional trauma. So, am I the asshole? Let me make this loud and clear. No, not even remotely. This isn't an overreaction. This is a boundary, a well-earned, painfully constructed, long overdue boundary. The writer and his sister aren't cruel. They're not petty. They're just done being silenced. And honestly, good for them. Let me know what you think. Should the writer have given his mom one last chance? Or did she seal her fate when she chose Frank over her own children? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this one's gonna hit a lot of nerves. Title, Am I the Asshole for Telling My Fiancé I Don't Want Her to Wear Her Late Husband's Wedding Ring During Our Ceremony? Let's get one thing straight before we dive in. Grief is messy. Love after loss is complicated. And marriage, that's not just a party, it's a promise. But what happens when those two worlds collide? What happens when your forever starts to feel like it has a shadow? Let's talk about it. Our writer, 30 years old, is engaged to a woman named Emily. She's kind, strong, and has lived through something no one should ever have to. She lost her husband, Tyler, in a car accident 5 years ago. They were young. It was sudden, and it left a scar that never fully healed. Now, 2 years into dating the writer, Emily is preparing to remarry. She's found love again. She's ready for a new chapter, but she's not walking into it empty-handed. She wants to carry a piece of her past with her. Specifically, Tyler's wedding ring, worn on a chain around her neck on the day she marries the writer. Not as a statement, not for attention, just a quiet tribute. And that tribute, it's tearing the writer up inside. Let's pause here. On one hand, the writer isn't asking for something outrageous. He's not asking her to erase Tyler or pretend he didn't exist. He spent years listening, supporting, standing by her during the anniversaries and those crushing waves of grief that come out of nowhere. But on their wedding day, the moment he's supposed to feel like the center of her world, he can't help but feel like he's sharing that space. Like the vows aren't just between two people, like he's competing with a ghost. And that hurts. The conversation between them wasn't explosive. No yelling, no dramatic ultimatums, but it was heavy. And that kind of heaviness, it doesn't go away quickly. Emily said her grief is part of who she is, and she's not wrong. Grief doesn't end when you find someone new. It doesn't evaporate the moment you fall in love again. If anything, it lingers in the quiet moments, in the corners of the heart no one else can touch. But here's where things get complicated. Our writer isn't trying to rip the past out of her hands. He's not asking her to forget. He's asking for something very specific, a day that's just about them. No echoes, no symbols from a different lifetime, just them. And let's be honest, this is one of those situations where there is no perfect answer. No obvious villain, just two people who love each other deeply, but are carrying very different emotional weights. Emily wants to honor her journey. The writer wants to feel like he's finally the destination. And maybe those two things can't coexist in the same room. Not today, not at the altar. Here's where my heart lands. No, the writer is not the asshole. He's not cruel, he's not dismissive, he's just honest. And honestly, that's what every marriage should start with. This isn't about jealousy, it's about emotional clarity. He's not trying to replace Tyler, he's just trying to feel like he's enough without having to share his own wedding day. The past is sacred, so is the future. But the present, that moment they say I do, that should belong to them and only them. Let me ask you this, is there a middle ground here? Would it feel different if she wore the ring the night before, or tucked it into a bouquet instead of around her neck? Or is the real issue that some grief, no matter how beautifully it's carried, is just too heavy to share? Drop your thoughts below, because this one's not just about rings or ceremonies. It's about what we bring with us into the most important moments of our lives, and who we're willing to let carry that weight beside us. Title: Am I the asshole for rejecting an open relationship after my boyfriend called me prudish for wanting monogamy? Let's be real. Relationships are complicated enough when it's just two people. Throw in a third or a fourth, and suddenly you're not just navigating love, trust, and emotional security. You're steering through minefields. Our writer, 19 years old, has been with her boyfriend, 21, for 2 years. 2 years might not seem like a lifetime, but when you've grown up together from high school to now, it feels like one. That kind of bond can feel unshakable until one of you shakes it. And that's exactly what's happening here. Recently, the boyfriend dropped a bombshell. He wants to open the relationship. Not because he doesn't love the writer, he swears he does, but because he feels like he's missing out on other experiences. Ah yes, the classic I love you, but I also want to sleep around move. Gentlemen, take notes on how not to present this conversation. Now, the writer isn't completely shutting the door. She's not screaming, she's not slamming phones, she's thinking it through. She admits they've dabbled in threesomes and enjoyed them, so this isn't coming out of nowhere. But there's a massive difference between exploring together and stepping out separately. This isn't just about sex, this is about safety, emotional grounding, trust. It's about not waking up at 3 a.m. wondering who he's texting or if she's being compared to someone else in his bed. But here's where it really starts to sting. He called her prudish for wanting commitment, for wanting monogamy. Let that sink in. He didn't just suggest a change, he invalidated her boundaries when she hesitated. Listen, there's nothing wrong with open relationships if both people are on board, fully and equally. But if one person is feeling pressured, called names, or emotionally twisted into being open-minded, that's not exploration. That's manipulation in disguise. Let's break it down. Our writer is young, but she's thinking clearly. She wants to be open-minded, and she even considers whether trying it might be okay. But there's that gut feeling, that tug that something's off. Something doesn't sit right. That's her intuition, and it's screaming. She even acknowledges that if things go south, she's done dating guys her age. And honestly, can you blame her? The emotional maturity gap between a 19-year-old woman trying to sort through complex feelings and a 21-year-old calling her names for having standards? Embarrassing. And let's not overlook this. She still loves him. She still wants to make things work. But love isn't just about how good someone is in bed or how long you've been together. It's about respect. And if respect isn't on the table, then neither should the relationship be. So is the writer the asshole for rejecting the open relationship? Absolutely not. In fact, she's showing more maturity than her boyfriend is. Being open to growth doesn't mean bending over backwards to accommodate someone else's fantasies. Wanting monogamy doesn't make you prudish, it makes you clear about your needs. You can love someone and still say, this isn't right for me. You can explore, experiment, and still draw a line. And if that line is being crossed before the relationship even opens, you already know what you need to do. What do you think? Is the writer protecting her peace, or is she being too cautious? Let's talk about it. Title: Am I the asshole for ruining a night out because my girlfriend got unexpectedly drunk and I had to step in? Let's set the stage. A big free event, the kind you and your friends talk about for weeks, the kind of night you circle on the calendar, make a playlist for, get your outfit just right. Everyone's there, spirits are high, music's pumping, and life, for a moment, feels like a movie. And in the middle of all this, the writer, just 22 years old, is doing what a lot of people her age aren't, watching out for her friends. While most are focused on chasing the high, the writer is playing the quiet protector, keeping tabs, checking in, looking after a friend who has a history of blacking out. That alone, that's emotional maturity most people don't get enough credit for. Her girlfriend was with the group, having a couple drinks, nothing crazy. She wasn't stumbling, slurring, or acting off in the slightest. Just your average normal night out, until suddenly it wasn't. Here's where the story takes a sharp left turn. The writer's girlfriend goes to the bathroom, a totally normal thing that doesn't come back. No text, no check-in, just silence. And then the phone call. A slurred voice. Panic. The words, "They took me. Help. Come get me." That's not a "she had one too many" kind of moment. That's pure, heart-pounding fear. The kind that hits your chest like ice water. And the writer, she doesn't freeze, she doesn't second guess, she moves, she searches, she fights to get past language barriers, she pushes through a bouncer who doesn't speak English, she finds her girlfriend, barely conscious, slumped over in some back room. Not safe, not okay, just completely out of it. And what does she do next? She doesn't freak out, she calls paramedics. She stays by her side, she makes sure she's safe until help arrives. Turns out it was likely a bad mix of alcohol and Wellbutrin. Totally unexpected. A dangerous cocktail that hit out of nowhere. Now here's the part that really hits a nerve. Instead of being met with support or even a simple, "Hey, you okay?" the writers met with guilt tripping. Some of their friends, and let's be honest, that word is starting to sound like a stretch, suggested she should have stopped her girlfriend from drinking, or shouldn't have let her go to the bathroom alone. Excuse me? Is the writer supposed to be everyone's designated babysitter now? Was she supposed to hold her girlfriend's hand everywhere? Last time I checked, adults are allowed to drink and go pee without a chaperone. She didn't ruin the night. She saved it from turning into a full-blown tragedy. Let's be crystal clear about something. The writer didn't fail. The people who made her feel guilty did. She saw a red flag. She acted fast. She got help. She protected someone she loves, and she shouldn't have to defend herself for that. If anything, she showed more emotional intelligence, courage, and presence of mind than most people twice her age. So to answer the question, is the writer the asshole for how she handled this night? Not even close. She's the reason that night didn't end in heartbreak. If you've ever been the one in the group who looks out for others, you know how exhausting and thankless it can be. But people like the writer, they're the reason nights like this don't turn into headlines. What do you think? Is the writer being unfairly blamed here? Or did her friends have a point? Let's talk about it. Title: Am I the asshole for planning to get a tattoo even though my husband hates them? All right, let's talk about this one. And let's be honest, there's a lot more going on here than just ink and skin. The writer is 35 years old. That's not 18, not 22, not even late 20s, still figuring it out years. We're talking a fully grown woman who has spent nearly 2 decades in a relationship and even longer wanting something simple, meaningful, and deeply personal: a tattoo. This isn't a rebellious whim or a midlife crisis. It's been sitting quietly in her heart since she was old enough to vote, the kind of decision that brews slowly over time. But for all those years, she didn't do it. Not because she changed her mind, not because she outgrew the desire, but because her husband, the man she's been with since the beginning, hates them. And hate might not even be a strong enough word. His reaction when she finally decided to go for it was intense. Way beyond just personal preference. He didn't just say, "I don't like tattoos." He said they were trashy. He said people who get them are attention-seeking. He said it would be beneath her to get one. He even went as far as to say he might not want to look at her afterward, and that he doesn't know if he can be intimate with her again. And let's not ignore the part where he joked about divorce. Now let me ask you, is that love? Is that support? Is that what a partner says when someone they care about finally goes after something they've quietly wanted for 20 years? The writer isn't talking about tattooing her face or making a spontaneous decision while drunk in Vegas. This isn't chaos. It's calculated. It's something that's been inside her, quietly waiting for permission that, frankly, she didn't need. And let's be real. The tattoo is symbolic now. It's no longer just about body art. It's about autonomy. It's about self-expression. And most of all, it's about finally choosing herself in a relationship where she's been bending for years. But here's what really stings: the judgment, the shame, the conditional love. Not just "I disagree, but I don't know if I'll be attracted to you anymore." And the worst part, the writer admits she's cried. She's heartbroken. She's angry. Because somewhere deep down, she knows this isn't just about tattoos. This is about control, the kind that's wrapped in passive-aggressive jokes and daily reminders that her choices disgust him. That's not a disagreement. That's emotional manipulation. So is the writer the bad guy for going through with it anyway? Absolutely not. She's not the one crossing boundaries. She's reclaiming one. And maybe, just maybe, this tattoo will be the first mark on the outside that matches the changes happening on the inside. A quiet reminder that her body is hers, and her life, even more so. So, what do you think? Is she right to follow through with it? Or is this a deeper issue that's been hiding under the surface for years? Let's get into it. Am I the asshole for walking out on my boyfriend after he surprised me with a threesome for my birthday? Let's talk about birthdays for a second. They're supposed to be special. Intimate. Intimate. It's the one day in the year where it's about you, where the people closest to you are supposed to say, "Hey, I see you. I know you. I care about what you love." Now imagine this. The writer, 24 years old, shows up to her boyfriend's apartment. She's been with him, she trusts him, and she's probably imagining something sweet. Maybe dinner reservations. A thoughtful gift, a moment just for them. But instead, she walks in, and there's another woman. Not a friend. Not a familiar face. A stranger standing in lingerie, waiting. And then, as if this wasn't already an episode of What the Hell is Going On, the boyfriend proudly announces that this is her birthday surprise. A threesome. Why? Because he thinks it's every girl's fantasy. Let's pause right there. What kind of delusional, porn-fed fever dream are we living in where a man thinks the most thoughtful gift he can give his girlfriend is another woman? Not just suggesting it, not asking about it, not checking in to see if this is even something she wants. No, he sets it up like it's a spa appointment. Except instead of aromatherapy, it's two women he's expecting to entertain him. Because let's be honest, this wasn't about the writer's fantasy. This was about his. Now the writer, she's stunned. She doesn't yell, doesn't throw anything. She just walks out. That moment right there, that wasn't weakness. That was strength. That was a woman who realized she was being put on display, not celebrated. A woman who understood, maybe for the first time, that the person she was with didn't respect her the way she deserved. And what does the boyfriend do next? He blows up her phone, calls her dramatic, says he's the one who's embarrassed. He's the victim now, apparently, because his thoughtful gift wasn't received with open arms or open legs. Let's get something straight. You don't get to ambush your partner with a random woman in lingerie and call it love. You don't get to decide what someone's fantasy is and then get mad when they don't want to play along. This wasn't just tone deaf. It was selfish. It was disrespectful. It was the kind of thing that says, I care more about what turns me on than what makes you feel safe. And let's talk about the girl he brought in. Who is she? How long was this planned? Was he messaging her behind the writer's back? Did he walk around smiling to himself all week thinking, man, she's gonna love this? If anything, that makes it worse. This wasn't impulsive. This was premeditated nonsense. The writer didn't overreact. She underreacted. Some people would have burned the apartment down metaphorically, or even literally. But she didn't. She took her dignity and she left. Now, he's painting himself as the poor guy who just wanted to spice things up. But no, this wasn't spicing things up. This was disrespect served cold. You want to bring a third person into the relationship? That requires communication, boundaries, and above all, mutual interest. This was a blindside, a birthday betrayal disguised as a kinky surprise. And here's the thing, there are couples who explore threesomes. There are women who love it. But they talk about it first. They plan it together. It's not sprung on someone like a confetti bomb with boobs. So let's circle back to the question. Is the writer the asshole for walking out instead of talking it out? Absolutely not. Walking out wasn't the immature thing to do. Planning a threesome without consent was. The writer didn't humiliate him. He did that to himself. And if he's more upset about being embarrassed than about how she felt, that tells you everything you need to know about who he was doing this for. Spoiler alert, it wasn't her. So to the writer, you didn't ruin your birthday. You saved it. And maybe, just maybe, you saved yourself from years of being with someone who thinks lingerie and a surprise partner is more meaningful than emotional connection. Because the real fantasy, being with someone who listens, respects, and actually gives a damn about what you want. But hey, what do you all think? Was this an honest mistake from a clueless boyfriend trying to be adventurous, or a huge red flag flapping in neon? Drop your thoughts. I know y'all are gonna have some feelings about this one. Am I the asshole for telling my dad's wife I'm not her do-over daughter? Let's rewind this story, because it starts long before that dinner table moment. The writer, now 22, had her world flipped upside down when she was just 12 years old. That's the age when most kids are trying to figure out who they are, not watching their family fall apart. Her father cheated, and the woman he cheated with eventually became his wife, Lynn. Now, let's be clear. The writer didn't grow up calling Lynn stepmom with affection. She wasn't there for scraped knees or late-night talks. She didn't stay up helping with school projects or showing up at soccer games. No. Lynn played a background role and not even a strong supporting character, more like an occasional cameo at holidays. For 10 years, she kept that distance. And honestly, the writer was fine with that. Civil, respectful, no drama. But suddenly, now that the writer is about to graduate college, now that she's stepping into her adult life, Lynn starts showing up everywhere. Commenting on posts, calling her my girl, crafting public Facebook declarations about tucking her in and being there every step of the way. Let's pause right there. Because for anyone who's lived through this kind of family fracture, this isn't just cringy. It's deeply infuriating. This isn't just a stepmom trying to bond. This is someone attempting to rewrite the story, to insert themselves into a narrative they weren't a part of. It's not just uncomfortable, it's erasure of the pain, the effort, the real sacrifices the writer's actual mother made. The woman who worked 2 jobs to keep things going. The woman who actually showed up. The woman who was probably drying her own tears while holding her daughter's hand. So fast forward to that dinner. Lynn says something like, "I can't wait to help plan your wedding someday." And that's when the writer finally breaks. She doesn't yell. She doesn't cause a scene. She simply says the truth. You weren't there. You don't get to act like you were. I'm not your do-over daughter. And Lynn bursts into tears. Now the father is livid, says she humiliated his wife, says she's ungrateful, says she's clinging to the past. But let's take a step back because this is important. What was the writer supposed to do? Smile? Nod politely while someone publicly claims the credit for a role they never played? No. This wasn't about bitterness. This was about boundaries. The truth is, Lynn is trying to rewrite a script, not out of love, but out of guilt. And maybe now that the writer is successful, grounded, and graduating, Lynn wants a piece of that legacy, something she can point to and say, "I helped make this." But she didn't. She was absent for the hard parts, and now she wants in on the good parts. That's not parenting. That's not tough. That's emotional theft. And the writer, she finally stood up and said, "No. You don't get to claim what you didn't build." That's not cruel. That's not cold. That's truthful. Now, are there ways the writer could have worded it more gently? Maybe. But let's be honest, when someone is trying to take credit for your childhood, for your growth, for your story, you're allowed to speak up. And you don't have to soften the blow just because it makes other people uncomfortable, especially when the discomfort is coming from their guilt, not your honesty. So, is the writer the asshole for saying what she said? No, she was the only one at that table telling the truth. Everyone else was playing pretend, painting a nice little family portrait over years of betrayal, pain, and silence. Sometimes speaking your truth will upset people, but that doesn't make you wrong. It just means you're finally done protecting people from the consequences of their own actions. And calling someone out when they try to rewrite your life story, that's not cruelty. That's self-respect. So let's hear it. What do you think? Was the writer too harsh, or was this exactly the kind of reality check that needed to be served? No sugarcoating, no apologies. Drop your thoughts. This one's personal. Am I the asshole for considering divorce because my husband is constantly pressuring me to have a natural birth instead of a C-section? Now, let's be real. Childbirth is already one of the most vulnerable, painful, and terrifying experiences a person can go through. And for the writer, it's not just a moment of fear. It's a deep-rooted anxiety. She's 27, pregnant, and dealing with a very real, very intense fear of natural birth. And she's not just basing it off a Google search. She's been doing her homework, talking to other moms, attending classes, and having open conversations with her doctor. And thank goodness, her doctor actually listens to her, validates her fears, supports her decision to schedule a C-section, not for some shallow reason, but for her peace of mind and emotional safety. But then there's the husband, a 34-year-old man, not a doctor, not a midwife, not a medical professional, but he feels entitled to dictate what kind of birth she should have. And here's where things really start to boil. It's not a one-time conversation. He brings it up constantly. Every discussion about the baby turns into a passive-aggressive lecture about natural birth. It's not advice anymore. It's pressure. It's control. And it's pushing the writer closer and closer to a breaking point. Until finally, she snaps. She tells him to f off because it's her body, her experience, and her decision. And honestly, who could blame her? Let's call this what it is. It's not just a disagreement. It's not just one partner expressing a preference. It's a man inserting himself into a process he will never physically go through and disregarding everything the writer is feeling. And what's worse, he's turning this incredibly personal, emotional decision into a battleground. Like her emotional trauma and medical fears don't matter because his idea of what's natural is more important. And then the guilt creeps in. Because the writer, like so many people in relationships, starts asking herself, am I overreacting? Am I the asshole? She's even considering divorce. Because if her husband can't respect her bodily autonomy now, when her health, her fear, and her future are on the line, what happens later? What happens when more serious decisions need to be made? What happens when her needs don't line up with his preferences? And yet, despite everything, the writer still hesitates. She worries about the baby growing up without a father, because she knows that pain. She lived it. That's the heartbreaking part. Even while facing emotional pressure and fear, she's still thinking about her child first. But what about her? Who's thinking about her? Because the truth is, no one should have to beg their partner for respect. No one should feel like their body is up for debate. And no one, especially a pregnant woman about to undergo major surgery or a potentially traumatic birth, should be made to feel guilty for making the safest, most comfortable choice for herself. So, is the writer the asshole for telling her husband to f off? No. She's a person at her breaking point, being emotionally cornered during one of the most stressful moments of her life. What her husband should be doing is listening, supporting, protecting her peace, not stripping it away one guilt trip at a time. And if the thought of leaving a man who refuses to respect your choices during childbirth makes you question the marriage, that's not overreacting. That's waking up. So what do you think? Was this a moment of emotional release or a red flag waving so hard it's about to knock over the whole relationship? Drop your thoughts. This one hits deep. Am I the asshole for leaving my boyfriend after he played a prank on me? The writer, a 24-year-old woman, had been with her now ex-boyfriend for over a year. A year and 3 months of memories, laughter, shared routines, the kind of comfort you think is safe, until it wasn't. Now picture this. She's in her own living room, doing something that brings her joy. Not out partying, not bothering anyone, just playing her electronic piano. A $1,000 instrument she worked for, cherished, and used as a creative outlet. And then, out of nowhere, it all comes crashing down. She steps away for just a few minutes, just a quick moment to the bathroom. And when she returns, without suspecting a thing, she touches her piano and her fingers stick to the keys. He superglued her piano keys. Let that sink in. This wasn't a harmless little prank. This wasn't hiding behind a door and yelling, boo. This was a calculated act. He waited until she left. He applied glue to the keys of a $1,000 piano. Then he pulled out his phone, hit record, and waited for the panic. And she did panic. Because of course she did. Her hands were stuck, her skin was burning, and her brain had no idea what was going on. And he stood there, laughing, recording. He didn't come in to help. He came in to capture the moment, like she was content for views, like her pain was content, like her trust was just another setup for a viral laugh. And when she screamed and cried, when he finally brought warm water to free her hands, he didn't even manage that without breaking something else. He spilled water all over the piano, frying it. So not only did she leave the moment with blisters on her fingers, literal injuries, but the piano, ruined. The thing she loved, destroyed. And for what? A prank? Oh, and it doesn't stop there. Even after she told him not to, he posted the video online. Let me say that again. After she begged him not to, he uploaded her humiliation anyway. At that point, she didn't even wait. She broke up with him the next morning and told him to get out. And honestly, I don't blame her for a second, because that wasn't a prank. That was disrespect, plain and simple. It was humiliation disguised as humor. And worse, it showed just how little he valued her feelings, her passion, her pain, or her privacy. And now he's calling, apologizing, probably realizing that views and likes don't warm your bed at night, probably realizing that he crossed a line that doesn't have a rewind button. But the writer, she's standing her ground, declining his calls, about to block him, because sometimes love isn't enough when someone shows you who they really are. And let's be honest, if someone superglues your passion to a keyboard for a laugh, they were never taking you seriously in the first place. So, is the writer the asshole for walking away? No. She's finally standing up for herself. And in a world where people keep calling toxic behavior just jokes, that takes guts. What do you think? Is this just a prank gone wrong? Or was this something much deeper? Let me know in the comments. Am I the asshole for cutting contact with my father after the DNA results showed I was indeed his son? This isn't your usual father-son argument. No petty drama, no miscommunication that could have been fixed with a heart-to-heart. This is deeper, heavier, the kind of emotional gut punch that leaves a scar you don't really recover from. The writer, a 21-year-old student, has spent his entire life thinking he knew who his father was. Not just biologically, but emotionally. And sure, maybe their bond wasn't perfect, maybe there were quiet moments, rough patches, but at the very least, there was an understanding. A silent agreement between a father and son that no matter what, they were family, until the divorce. The writer's parents, after over 2 decades of marriage, decided to call it quits. And while it wasn't messy at first, the moment lawyers entered the room, something ugly surfaced. Something no child should ever have to hear. His father, a man who raised him for 21 years, opened his mouth and dropped a nuclear bomb. "He's not even my son." Just like that, decades of memories of birthdays, of family dinners and growing pains, reduced to a bitter accusation. And why? Because the marriage was ending, and the father wanted someone to blame, someone to point at. And instead of dealing with his own failures, he turned on his own kid. He told the writer's mother that this child, this young man, had ruined his life, that he never even wanted him, that he was nothing but a reminder of a mistake. Let's pause here. Can you imagine that? Hearing secondhand from your mother that your own father never saw you as his, that everything he did for you, every "I love you," every father-son moment was hollow. That's not just rejection, that's soul-breaking, and still, even in that pain, the writer stepped up. His mom organized a DNA test to shut the accusations down once and for all. And the writer, who had done nothing wrong, had to leave college, travel back home, and sit in a room where his existence was being legally questioned. A room where his own father couldn't even look him in the eye. Think about that moment, sitting there, silent, knowing this isn't just about science, it's about worth, it's about identity, it's about heartbreak. Test. The results were clear, 100% his son. But the apology, the remorse, the father stepping up and saying, "I was wrong, I'm sorry, I let my emotions get the better of me," it never came. Days passed, then weeks. Not a word, not a call, nothing but silence from the man who just accused him of being a stranger. And when the writer finally decided to stay silent in return, that's when the guilt trips started. Suddenly, the writer was the villain. His father's side of the family flipped the narrative. Now he was the one tearing the family apart. He was ungrateful. He was bitter. The victim became the aggressor, just because he didn't want to pretend like nothing had happened. And then came the final twist, the one that turns this from sad to tragic. In a moment that should have been filled with reconciliation, the father doubled down. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to mend the wound. Instead, he handed his son a document, a paper asking the writer to sign away any relationship, not just symbolically, legally, emotionally, forever. He wanted freedom, not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from being a father altogether. He wanted to be able to walk away and never look back. And what did the writer do? He didn't lash out, he didn't scream, he didn't burn bridges. He saw the paper, saw the truth behind it, and he walked away for good. Now here's the question. Is the writer the asshole for cutting him off? Absolutely not. How do you come back from something like that? How do you forgive someone who didn't just hurt you, they tried to erase you? This isn't just about biology, it's about love, loyalty, and whether or not someone chooses to show up. Being a parent isn't a job title, it's a commitment. And the father chose to abandon it the second it became inconvenient. The writer didn't choose this pain. He didn't cause the divorce, he didn't ask to be born. But he's the one left holding all the emotional wreckage, and now people want him to apologize? No, that's not how this works. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't forgive, it's let go. Let go of toxic love. Let go of the hope that someone will magically become the person you needed them to be. And most of all, let go of the belief that you owe them something just because of DNA. So to the writer, if you're listening, you are not the asshole, you're the survivor in this story. and you are allowed to walk away. Am I the asshole for telling my brother-in-law to stop picking on my kids or he's not coming on vacation? All right, strap in, because this one has everything: an obnoxious uncle, a protective mom, and a family vacation that might just fall apart before it even begins. A mom who's had enough. The writer is a mother of three: Rob, 16M, Lisa, 14F, and Anne, 9F. A tight-knit sibling trio who actually get along, which is more than most families can say. Lisa, the middle child, is autistic, and her special interest is Taylor Swift. Not just a casual fan either. Lisa lives and breathes Swiftie life. Now, here's the beautiful part. Her siblings, Rob and Anne, don't mock her or roll their eyes. They support her. They let her ramble about re-recordings, Easter eggs in music videos, and the meaning behind folklore. It's a household where everyone's interests are respected. Or they were. Until Hector showed up. Enter Uncle Hector, the self-appointed comedian. You know the type. The guy who thinks being irritating is the same as being funny. The kind who constantly says, "It's just a joke, bro," as if that's a magic spell that excuses any behavior. Hector is the writer's brother-in-law, and for some reason, he treats needling people like a sport. His entire personality revolves around provoking reactions, and he seems to think it's charming. With the writer's husband out of the country, Hector's behavior has only gotten worse. It's like he thinks there's no one left to keep him in check, so he doubles down on the nonsense. And guess who becomes his new favorite target? Lisa. Lisa gets the brunt of it. At first, it might have seemed harmless. Hector starts joking about Taylor Swift, but not in a lighthearted way. No, he calls her childish names, mispronounces the fan base deliberately, Swiffers instead of Swifties, and mocks everything Lisa is passionate about. Let's pause right there. It's one thing to make a joke. It's another to intentionally antagonize a 14-year-old autistic girl about the one thing that brings her joy. Especially when she calmly corrects him and he just keeps going. Rob, the older brother, steps in. And good on him for it. He calls out Hector, asking why he keeps using the wrong term when Lisa already told him the right one. Hector's response? Cry about it. Real mature. And then he does what every insecure man does when confronted. He doubles down. Calls Rob Roberta like it's some brilliant insult, tries to get a rise out of both kids, and plays the just joking card once again. Mom enters the ring. This is when the writer walks in. She doesn't even get to speak before Rob, bless him, has already clapped back. Bro, did you really just call me a girl's name? Are you 12? That's when the writer says, enough is enough. She tells Hector he's being rude, acting out because the husband's not around, and then lays it down plain and simple. Stop now, or you're not coming to Colorado with us this summer. And this is where Hector loses it. Hector throws a fit and calls in reinforcements. Instead of reflecting for half a second on his behavior, Hector spirals. He says the writer is a controlling yak. Yes, yak. Claims she's making a huge deal over Taylor Swift when it's not about Taylor at all. This isn't about a pop star. This is about respect. Hector storms out with his precious Costco chicken, probably fuming and muttering insults under his breath like a cartoon villain. And, of course, within minutes, the mother-in-law calls the writer. Cue the heavy sighing. She doesn't exactly defend Hector, but she's not backing the writer either. Just vague disappointment and the classic, I just hope we can work it out. Because apparently the real tragedy here is not the harassment of a child, but the possibility of Hector missing his precious vacation. Let's be honest, who's really causing drama here? Not the writer. Let's make that clear. This wasn't some dramatic overreaction over pop music. It was a parent drawing a line after watching a grown man target a vulnerable kid for laughs. Lisa wasn't even being sensitive. She corrected him politely and moved on. But Hector kept going because he liked the power trip. And let's not forget, Rob was there. A teenage boy standing up for his sister, showing more emotional maturity than his uncle by a mile. Hector wasn't joking. He was bullying. So is the writer the asshole? Absolutely not. The writer didn't just protect her kids. She did it calmly, with boundaries, and with the promise of consequences. Hector was warned. He didn't listen. And let's be real, if his entire year hinges on one family vacation, then maybe he should think twice before alienating the very people who invited him in the first place. Letting kids enjoy their interests without ridicule is the bare minimum an adult should be capable of. And if Hector can't even manage that, then maybe Colorado will be better without him. Final thoughts. If anyone's causing family drama here, it's not the mom laying down boundaries. It's the grown man picking on a teenager and then playing victim when called out. The writer didn't explode. She didn't curse him out in front of the kids. She just said, "Stop or you're not coming." That's not drama, that's parenting. And honestly, that's how you raise kids who know they deserve respect. Let Hector keep his Costco chicken. The rest of the family, they've got Taylor Swift, solidarity, and a mom who doesn't play when it comes to protecting her kids. And that's way more valuable than any vacation. Am I the asshole for not covering my friend's meal when she ordered more? All right, folks, grab your water, maybe a modest plate of pasta, and let's get into this one. Because this isn't just about dinner. This is about boundaries, expectations, and that one friend who always acts surprised when you don't fund their impulsive little feast. The setup, post-midterm celebration at a casual spot. So the writer and a group of friends, fresh off surviving midterms, decide to grab dinner together. Nothing fancy, just a chill spot where you pay after you eat. Casual vibes. Now, let's paint the picture. The writer, being financially conscious like a lot of students, keeps it simple. A small meal, nothing extravagant. Water to drink, pasta from the specials menu. You know, something you can eat without sweating over your bank account afterward. Others at the table, similar energy. But one friend, let's call her appetizer, entree, dessert girl. Well, she shows up ready to treat herself like it's her birthday. She goes full course, an appetizer, a giant entree, dessert, and a drink too. Which, hey, let's be clear, no one's judging her for ordering big. She's allowed to eat what she wants. But here's where it all flips. The bill drop. And suddenly she's feeling generous with everyone else's wallet. When the check lands, she casually tosses out a, "Let's just split it evenly." Now hold up. That record scratch moment, that was the writer's brain trying to process what she just heard. Split evenly? After you went full 5-course meal while everyone else is eating light, it's not just tone deaf, it's entitled. And the worst part? She tries to make it sound like this is their thing. It's what we always do. No, it isn't. The writer, very calmly, says no. They explain they only brought enough to cover what they ordered, plus tip. They came prepared. They didn't expect to subsidize someone else's feast. And honestly, that's more than fair. But appetizer, entree, dessert girl? Oh no, suddenly she's the victim. It's not that deep. You're being cheap over a few bucks. A few bucks? It would have doubled what the writer planned to spend. That's not a few bucks. That's the difference between having grocery money for the week or not. The fallout. Passive aggression and embarrassment. Now here's where it gets real messy. The writer stands firm and pays for what they ordered. The rest of the group, they go along with the even split. Maybe to avoid drama. Maybe to keep the peace. But appetizer, entree, dessert girl, she doesn't let it go. She starts telling mutual friends that the writer embarrassed her, made her look greedy. But let's just stop right here. She didn't ask. She assumed. She didn't check in. She imposed. And when someone drew a boundary, she called them cheap. That's not embarrassment. That's entitlement throwing a tantrum in disguise. So is the writer the asshole? Let's get this straight. The writer did the mature thing. They ordered within their means. They were upfront. They didn't shame anyone else's choices. They simply didn't want to be financially responsible for a meal they didn't eat. That is not being cheap. That's being smart. You know what is cheap, though? Trying to guilt your friends into covering your luxury order under the guise of it's easier. Easier for who? Because it sure isn't easier for the person who now has to Venmo you $20 more than they expected. Final thoughts, the real cost of that meal. This story isn't about food. It's about respect. And the moment someone decides that your money is theirs to split without a heads up or a conversation, that's a red flag. It's wild how some people only remember we always split evenly when they're the ones ordering the most. Funny how no one's shouting, let's all split it, when they just got water and a side salad. At the end of the day, this isn't a friend being embarrassed. It's a friend being held accountable, and they didn't like how that felt. So no, the writer is not the asshole. They're the only one at the table who stood up for themselves with grace, honesty, and absolutely no shame. And to the friend who felt embarrassed, maybe next time, order within your budget or ask before assuming someone else is footing the bill. Because kindness isn't owed and generosity should never be expected. And when the check comes, don't act shocked when people only pay for what they actually ate. That's not selfish. That's just common sense. Am I the asshole for telling my wife she can't cook? All right, this one's got it all. Undercooked chicken, crunchy rice, and a man desperately trying to stop a potential dinner party disaster before it turns into a health hazard. Let's dig in, because the kitchen may be cozy, but this story is cooked to chaos. The marriage, built on love and slightly raw meat. So the writer and his wife have been together for 8 years. 8 years of shared life, memories, love, and apparently a silent war simmering in the kitchen. Because here's the deal. Cooking is split evenly in their household, 50-50. But every time she's behind the stove, the writer feels like he has to go into full Gordon Ramsay mode, minus the cameras plus the existential dread. We're talking undercooked meat, crunchy rice, veggies with the texture of packing peanuts, you name it. And no matter how many times the writer tries to gently suggest something, she brushes it off as him being picky. But folks, this isn't about seasoning. This isn't about taste. This is about basic food safety. The great rice debate and why Google isn't welcome in her kitchen. Here's where it gets almost comical. If it wasn't so frustrating, every time she makes rice, the writer tries to explain the very basic rule. 1 part rice, 2 parts water. It's not a preference. It's not a maybe it's just how you like it thing. It's literally on the box. It's on Google. It's on every cooking site known to man. But she's like, that seems like too much water. I don't want it mushy. Mushy? Sis, it's not mushy. It's cooked. The fact that this man is regularly chewing on raw grains of rice like he's foraging in the wilderness is wild. And it's not just rice. It's pasta, veggies, bread, meat. Everything she touches turns into, well, something between inedible and mildly dangerous. Enter the dinner party hostess with a questionable menu. Now, if this was just a private problem, maybe he'd let it slide. Eat the crunchy food, chase the chicken with a prayer. Suffer in silence. But no. She loves cooking for guests. She wants to be that host, serving up home-cooked meals to friends and family. And the writer? He's trailing behind her like a nervous stagehand trying to stop the show from going completely off the rails, checking oven temps, resalting under-seasoned dishes, praying the meat isn't pink. And their friends? Yeah, they're catching on. The dinner invitations have started getting quiet declines, because there's only so many times you can smile while chewing through a hockey puck that was once pork. The chicken incident that pushed it over the edge. So here's where the pot boils over. One night, his wife throws some chicken in the oven while the writer hops in the shower. 10 minutes later, she's announcing dinner is ready. Now look, even if you're not a chef, you know chicken takes longer than that. She says it's fine. She pan-seared it first. He checks. And what does he see? Pink on the inside. Not a little under, not barely there. Fully pink. And that's when the dam breaks. The writer snaps, tells her flat out, you're gonna kill someone one day. This isn't picky, it's food safety 101. And her response, well, my mom never taught me how to cook. Okay, fair. But she's 28, and the writer, not trying to be cruel, says, you're almost 30. That's no excuse anymore. And look, harsh? Maybe? Untrue? Absolutely not. So, is the writer the asshole? This is where it gets tricky. On one hand, yes, he probably could have softened the delivery, but he's been soft for 8 years. And it hasn't worked. This wasn't one burnt piece of toast. This is habitual, potentially dangerous cooking, and a total unwillingness to take feedback or learn, even when people are literally avoiding her food. And let's be real. If the roles were reversed and a man was proudly serving raw chicken to dinner guests while ignoring basic food safety, people would light him up. This isn't about being mean. This is about trying not to send your friends home with salmonella. Final thoughts when love meets the thermometer. Marriage is compromise, but compromise doesn't mean risking food poisoning out of politeness. The writer clearly loves his wife. He's been patient. He's tried to help. He didn't make it a public scene. He tried to correct her in private, but at some point, caring means telling the truth, even when it's hard to hear. And truthfully, it sounds like his wife doesn't want to admit that she's got some blind spots in the kitchen. Instead of learning, she's doubling down. Instead of adjusting, she's brushing it off. But there's a big difference between cooking from the heart and cooking irresponsibly. So no, the writer is not the asshole. He's not rude, he's not controlling. He's just trying to keep people safe and maybe, just maybe, enjoy a plate of pasta that doesn't crunch. And if honesty hurts a little, sometimes that's the seasoning a relationship needs to grow. Am I the asshole for accepting a big inheritance from my grandma and telling my dad and his family they were monsters, like she said? This one feels heavy. It's not just about money, it's not just about inheritance, it's about pain. Deep, long-term, never acknowledged pain. And when someone dies, the truth doesn't always stay buried. Sometimes it comes back with a vengeance and a will. The writer's early life, abandoned before he could speak. Let's rewind. The writer was just a baby when his mother decided she didn't want to be a parent. She left him behind, not with his dad, but with his paternal grandparents. That alone tells you how early on things were shaky. And when his dad, military man, just back from deployment, finally stepped in, he took the writer home. But shortly after, the grandfather passed away. So from a very young age, it was just writer, his dad, and grandma stepping in whenever she could. Sounds like a fragile start, and it only got more unstable from there. The new family that never wanted him. By the time the writer was 5, his dad dropped the news. He'd met someone. She had kids. And they were all going to be one big happy family, except they weren't. The very first time they all met went okay. The second time, the new step-siblings ignored him, threw tantrums at even hearing his name, and then, just like that, they were living together. No bonding time, no adjustment, just 2 meetups and a U-Haul. Within a month, the wedding happened, and at that wedding, one of the writer's earliest memories of his new family was being shoved to the floor by his step-siblings because they didn't want him getting ready with them. Let that sink in. A child at his father's wedding, pushed down by the people he was told were his new family. And that was just the beginning. Abuse behind closed doors and parents who turned a blind eye. The bullying wasn't subtle. It wasn't mild. It was full-on physical and emotional abuse, and it only got worse. The writer, just a kid, went to his dad and stepmom again and again, crying, pleading, desperate for help. And what did they say? It's hard for the other kids. They lost their dad. They don't mean to hurt you. But they did. They absolutely did. And when the writer needed his father the most, he chose his wife and her children over his own son. Repeatedly. And his grandma, she saw it all. She tried to intervene, tried to protect him, even called CPS at one point, but nothing stuck. They called it parenting issues, gave a warning, but no real consequences. And so the abuse went on. Years of it. The day everything exploded. When the writer was 11, things finally hit a breaking point. At a family gathering, one of the step-siblings shoved him, again, just for trying to sit near them. Grandma? She'd had enough. She let loose, called them monsters to their faces. And when the stepmom and dad pushed back, Grandma didn't flinch. She said it. You're all monsters, and you, my son, are never coming back from this. That day, Grandma went no contact, and the writer, he was dragged back to the hell he lived in. Reuniting with the only person who ever protected him. Years later, the writer reconnected with his grandma, just a week before he moved out of his dad's house. Of course, the step family freaked out, called the cops, tried to claim grandma was abusive, but none of it stuck. The writer got to stay. And from then on, it was just the two of them, living together, sharing bills, sharing life, healing from the wreckage his father left behind. Then she died and left everything to him. In 2024, Grandma passed away, but she didn't go without making her final wishes loud and clear. She left her son, Ryder's dad, $100, just enough to keep him from contesting the will. Everything else went to the Ryder. Her home, his childhood home. Her savings, her sentimental possessions, even her investments. She left nothing to her son's wife, nothing to the step-siblings, nothing to the people she believed had tormented her grandson. And now, you should share. It wasn't fair. First it was lawyers, then DMs, then public shaming. You should divide it evenly. Your dad deserves more. How could you accept it when she excluded your siblings? Your siblings? Those people who tormented him for years, who shoved him, ignored him, told him he should have never been born. The Ryder didn't even flinch. When his dad showed up, shaming him for accepting an inheritance that disrespected their family, the Ryder finally said it. She was right. You are all monsters. You don't deserve anything. And that was it. The final nail. So, am I the asshole? The Ryder's asking this because he knows that saying it out loud, calling your own father and his family monsters, has consequences. He knows it may make life harder. He knows he stirred the pot, but was he wrong? Let me ask you this. If someone had watched you suffer for years, if they'd been the only person to fight for you, to stand up for you, to take you in and give you a real home, if they left you everything they had, not out of spite, but out of love, would you feel guilty for honoring their truth? Because that's what this was. It wasn't revenge. It was reality. The Ryder didn't destroy a family, they destroyed him, and now they're upset that the one person who protected him saw through it all. Final verdict, not the asshole, not even close. The Ryder's not the villain here. He's the survivor. And finally, after years of being silenced, he spoke the truth. If that truth made monsters angry, maybe they shouldn't have acted like monsters. Am I the asshole? Not in this story, not for a second.